I am so excited to be here today. This is such an honor to be here. I'm going to start my research presentation by talking to you about a couple of statistics about intimate partner violence. So not domestic violence in particular, but violence that occurs when two intimate partners are fighting. Okay? Now I'm going to talk to you in depth about female perpetrators of violence when they are actually hitting an abusive partner, right? But before I do that, I just want to run by a couple stats for you. So first, globally, 35% of women worldwide have experienced either physical or sexual intimate partner violence or non-partner sexual violence. 70% of women have experienced physical or sexual violence in their lifetime by an intimate partner. Women ages 20 to 24 are at greatest risk of becoming victims of domestic violence. About 1/3 of female murder victims ages 12 or older are killed by an intimate partner. Last, women are injured 94% of the time, while men are injured 14% of the time during intimate partner violence. So I wanted to create a context. Now here's what we need to do. We need to understand what is happening in the criminal justice system. Not just looking at intimate partner violence and what is happening in the home, but by critically understanding how we understand female criminality, we can have a better understanding about these arrest rates that are changing in society today. So women and men are being arrested, for attempts of domestic violence. So let's just take a step back and kind of understand what's happening. So the first depiction of female criminality that we have is of the fallen angel. Everybody say that for me. Say the fallen angel. Right, the fallen angel. Now I want you to think about those two words. Now as I say these words, I want you to think about what that means to be a fallen angel. So here, the idea is that this woman is committing a crime because she is not a real woman. What does it mean to be a real woman, right? So the idea here is that if you violate some form of, your sexuality, if you do not engage in, normative heterosexual behavior, you understand, if you are engaging in some type of sexual activity that would violate your womanhood, you understand, then you would be perceived of as someone who would be a criminal for that reason. So the idea here, if you're a sociologist, you understand what a functional perspective is. The idea that there are norms and expectations of people in society. So this first context of female criminality would help you to understand that when you ask someone, oh, is this woman a criminal? The first thing someone would think of is who? What type of woman? Tell me. The fallen angel. See, you're going to work with me here, right? So who is she? She's the fallen angel, right? So that would be normal during a certain period of time. So think about the 1960s and think about the 1970s. If, in fact, a woman is arrested for something, she would typically be arrested because she fits some type of fallen angel status. So now as this woman is in a position where she has access to work, right? She has access to opportunities. She becomes more liberated, the woman in society. And so the funny piece about liberation is that when this woman is entering society and she is now able to engage, she's able to engage this mobility process. She is becoming socially mobile. Then society might say, wait a minute, if she's a criminal, she could be a criminal for two reasons. Two reasons. The first, she might be perceived of as a fallen angel if, in fact, she is arrested. But another normative reason would be, oh, she's liberated. Now that she has access to work, now that she can, access these routines that are being, engaged by some men, she might be more likely to be involved in some type of crime. So then it's a twofold situation because women are allowed to step into society and become more successful, but at the same time, they're potential criminals. So at this point, we have two things that could happen. You could be liberated, right, and then be a potential criminal. Or you can be the fallen angel who is not fitting this normative gender role. So think about this when we're talking about female criminality. And I want you to start at this point, engaging in your mind what would happen if you have a man and a woman being, interacted with by police officers, or someone seeing some type of fighting occurring, right? What would be the normal perception of this female as a criminal or not? As we get to this next transition, you have this masculine woman, okay? And now, as women engage society and they become more liberated, the question becomes, are you doing this like a man would do? Are you behaving in a masculine way? Are you going to be aggressive because you're going to be like a man, you understand? Or are you doing this because this is actually who you are? But the normative perspective becomes, when this woman engages in violence and criminality, she's actually doing it as men do. And we have to think about these domestic violence and intimate partner violence theories and how they are impacted when society as a whole begins to look at this woman as if she is doing this as men do. And men in our society, they say in research, commit domestic violence in very unique ways. One of the most extreme ways is through in a typology, they talk about this violence called intimate terrorism. Really interesting concept, right? Intimate terrorism. Very interesting in the 1990s and in 2000 when we began to use this word terrorism in very unique ways. So you have to think about time, and that's what we're doing right now. We're thinking about time, and we're thinking about the context, and we're thinking about terminology that are used to explain and describe men and women, especially those who are perpetrating intimate violence. And I also need you to step back and think about ethnicity as well, and think about the people who are being arrested for intimate partner violence, and think about how a term like intimate terrorism can be displaced and used to explain and describe those men who are actually perpetrating intimate partner violence. But back here. So I need you to think. So now we're beginning to intersect female criminology typologies of behavior and then domestic or intimate partner violence, and how these terms and concepts are used and how women are perceived of as criminals in American society. So this last transition that we have, danger, right? The dangerous woman. Now these studies start to say in 2000, right? 2010, 2015, oh, the women are as dangerous as are the men. When women are committing intimate partner violence, oh, she's as likely to beat him up. She's as likely to pull out the frying pan and bust his head inside out, right? She is as violent and dangerous as our men. And at this point in society, when a woman is going to jail, someone might say, she must have committed a crime. Maybe she broke the law in some type of way. You did something wrong normatively. Now, sometimes we might look back, we look at our rape statistics, right? And you ask the question, well, if this woman is actually raped, are we going to go back and see fallen angel? Remember? Fallen angel. Are we going to go back and see if she carried herself in the appropriate way? We're going to decide how we want to treat her in this situation, because we're going to go all the way back in our beginning stages of our typology. So remember, in my classes I say you can't get your egg back. We do an experiment, you understand, and we make brownies. And after the brownies are done, the student says, well, give me my egg back. Well, you can't. There's already a chemical reaction. Once we put all those ingredients together and we put it in the oven, you can't get your egg back. So although society shifts and changes over time, you still have to understand that these older philosophies show their faces. They show up, and they show up in very interesting ways when you're talking about intimate violence, when you're talking about domestic violence. They show up again and again. So understanding the different stages of female criminality is very, very important in looking at domestic violence and looking at trends. When women are arrested, how are we treating them? What are we thinking? And first and foremost, when we're going to help them, what are those interventions? Are those interventions designed for men and then trying to displace this treatment and how we want to help men, and then saying we're going to go and help women using that exact same theory? Well, that absolutely happens. It happens all the time. Do you know why? We want to save money. We want to save time. And most of all, if you are a fallen angel, if you are liberated, if you behave in a masculine way, and if you are a dangerous woman, you're going to experience some double jeopardy, aren't you? So I now want you to step back again and think about these different transitions and categories and think about the inequality that women have experienced in society as a whole, even if they aren't experiencing domestic violence, think about these ways that people can perceive of women in society and think about how that might impact you. Think about how that might impact your mother. Think about how that might impact your sister. Think about how that might impact your cousin, your daughter, your best friend. Think about that. Think about how these terms can in fact impact us. So now, in order to really contextualize the research and understand intimate partner violence and female-perpetrated partner violence, we have to understand what's happening right now with regards to the arrest rates. We have upcharging occurring. So those women who may be experiencing poverty, or people who are minority groups, or people who have lesser access to a lawyer, they may have to go to jail a lot longer than they would otherwise, because they're going to be charged with a more, a more serious charge for something that shouldn't happen that way. Just shouldn't happen that way. We also see an increase of cases for domestic abuse. At some point, when there was a woman involved, we would deal with these things informally. We had organizations and we would step in and we try to do something. We wouldn't, in fact, want that woman to be labeled as a person who's participating in intimate partner violence. Well, one of the reasons people say that is because, once the woman receives one of these labels, it becomes very difficult for her to regain her reputation. Very difficult for her to regain her reputation. She couldn't just put on a new dress, go to the gym, do Zumba, and come out, and she's a totally new person. Once you receive this label, you have to live with that label. There have also been increases in zero tolerance policies and mandatory arrest policies. So here is my research. Here's what I'm working on. I'm looking at women who hit their violent partners. And I am exploring 4 key areas of that research to help us to understand that, number one, women are being arrested and we don't understand how we need to treat these women once they're being arrested for domestic violence. And 2, that the theories that have been designed to address women's violence we've dropped the ball. In social sciences, we've dropped the ball with regard to understanding theories that explain why women are motivated to hit their violent partners. Now, typically, in research on intimate partner violence, you see 2 groups of people being addressed. Number one, you have this type of violence called violent resistance. And a theorist named Michael Johnson talks about violent resistance. He talks about women who are experiencing intimate terrorist attacks by a man. And keep in mind, you understand I'm talking about heterosexual terms here. Everybody with me? So this primary research that we have on domestic violence is not really looking at non-traditional populations, right? But really looking at, the man versus the woman and identifying very specific characteristics. So this woman who is a victim of intimate terrorism is usually experiencing something they call battered women syndrome. Raise your hand if you've heard of battered women syndrome before, right? So this is not a new term. So we usually see these interventions that are going to address battered women syndrome. Is there a problem with that? No, there's not a problem with that. We need that. We need interventions that address battered women syndrome. But given the shifts and changes in society, we also need other interventions that will address women's violence and women's experiences of violence. The other typology that you see are these different interventions that focus on coercive control, coercion, expressed by men in society. And this is because of this patriarchal analysis of domestic violence, that you have this man who has power and control and is taking this power and control and using that power to take away the power of this woman. Emotionally, psychologically, physically, this partner is coming in and stripping this woman away, stripping her bare and leaving her in the state of, what they call a battered woman, leaving her in that position. So typically for domestic violence, that's what you see. But as we have these arrests increasing, and we see more instances of 2 types of violence. Situational partner violence, that is violence that stems from conflict. So this means that my partner and I are engaged in a conversation. I don't like what you're saying. I don't like how this situation is playing out. And for that reason, I'm going to punch you in your face. Now, I know for sure that some of you have been involved in a situation with someone and you didn't like what they were saying. And you may not have personally reached out and, invited your fist to their mouth. But you may have thought really, really deeply about this situation. I really feel like, intervention, I need intervention because I might take this person out, right? So I know that people do this, and this is called situational violence, when you have conflict in a relationship and you resolve that conflict by using violence. Everybody with me? Now, situational violence is not supposed to entail coercion. It's just about us being angry because we have conflict. So we see a rise in this type of violence. Another type of violence that we see a rise in is this violence called mutually performed violence. They call it mutual violent combat. Now, the funny piece here is there's a definite framework for mutual violent combat. This means that you have two partners, and they both are using this intimate terrorist abuse. So you have a man and a woman who are both engaging in coercive violence against one another, and that is how they define mutual violence. Whenever you see this around, these partners are mutually engaging in partner violence, they are assuming that both the aggression and the use of control are occurring simultaneously. I have a problem with that. I have a really big problem with that. So when I do my research and I'm looking at these women and I'm looking at these men and I'm like, okay, well, she wants to control him. She really, really wants to control him. She's not large enough, or she may not be controlling the pocketbook. So she may not be able to control him in that very way. So when people are saying, oh, this is mutual, they're not really strongly assessing what control is in the relationship. What are you controlling in the relationship? So I look at that. Another thing that I look at are emotive responses. And emotive responses are how you feel. What feelings, what emotions trigger you to actually commit intimate partner violence? And I believe that it's cognitive emotive theory. Cognitive behavioral models are going to help us to address issues of intimate partner violence, because we want to do two things. When we're helping somebody out in their relationship, we want to help them address that emotion throughout their lives. Not just when they're going to hit their partner, because I have to work with this person. They're in an intimate partner, they're experiencing intimate partner violence at home, but they're coming to work and they're trying to abuse me too. So, we want to try to help this person comprehensively, because that person is probably engaging in these behaviors in more than one space. And I believe that it's pathways of violence. They're experiences that occur in your life that affect how you engage in relationships and how you engage people. So when you see these studies about women who participate in intimate partner violence, typically there's some type of historical trajectory or something that has gone on in the past that is intersected with who they are and why they decide to actually hit this particular partner. And last, interventions. So because I look at, I'm looking at pathways of violence, I'm looking at a variation in types of control that people are using, then there's a certain type of intervention that actually relates to those particular indicators. There's a huge gap in research in interpartner violence when it comes to these four particular areas of study. A huge gap. And there are implications. There are implications for police officers. There are implications for social programs. There are implications for the health and well-being of men and women and children in society. So this is the context for this research. Now what I'm going to do for you is I'm going to go through each of these four areas and kind of just show you a little bit more about each of them so that you understand what these four indicators mean when looking at women who are hitting their violent partners. So first, conceptualizing control. Take a look at this. Coercive control. When you use coercive control, it's because you want to retaliate, usually for some reason. That retaliation may not be because of something that the person that you're with has done. It might be you brought something from home. So you're frustrated about something, and now you're going to retaliate, but you may not retaliate against the person that you're angry with. You may take that frustration out on somebody else. This is another reason why pathways to violence are really important, everybody understand, because when you're experiencing frustration and stress in your life, throughout your life, that may impact your relationship. You want to have a healthier relationship. You want to make sure that you can deal with the emotive responses that relate to that particular frustration. And you also want to think about how you relate with other people, how you interact with other people, because retaliation may not be the answer. It may not be the answer. Mirror punishment. Oh, I don't like the way you treat me, so I'm going to treat you the same way. Raise your hand if you know anybody who's done that before. So I don't like how you treat me, so I'm going to show you, What is it my girl used to say? I'm from Missouri, you got to show me, So I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you how you treat me so that you know how that feels. Now, even though some people know that that's not the right thing to do, how many people actually do it, How many people actually say, I'm going to give you a taste of your own medicine? And this happens. Now, there are also restraint techniques. When you're going to coerce somebody, you might want to stop them from doing things. I'm going to take away your money. I'm going to take away your purse. I'm going to silence you. Please shut up. Right? Have you ever seen that happen? You see two couples engaging together, and the woman wants to say something, or the man wants to say something, and the partner looks at them and says, shut up. That's not nice, is it? That's not very nice. People do it every day. Shut up. They do it all the time. People even do it to their children. Shut up. Should they? I don't know. But this is what this is all about. Now, situation control, a little different. With situational control, you might want to control things like the body, like, we're going to go to this nice restaurant. Don't wear the sweatpants. Don't come out here in those sweatpants. Get a rubber band for your hair. Don't wear those jeans. I don't like those jeans. Sneakers aren't appropriate. How about this? You can't wear baseball caps in this setting. No, you can't come in here without any shoes on. You can't come in here if you don't have a shirt on. These are forms of situational control. They happen in society all the time. So think about it. These are forms of situational control. Not necessarily coercion, but when you try to control the situation, you can definitely control what other people are doing. You can puppeteer and manipulate people all the time by trying to control the situation and indirectly controlling that person and what they're doing. When you think about this stuff, just think about your relationships too. This is really important. Like, there's a personal context. The personal is political, Patricia Hill Collins would say, right? So I also need you to look at this. You may not have slapped anybody, but there may be some issues that you need to resolve. So be thinking about this stuff as we're talking about it. All right. So child abuse is nothing wrong. Now, in this study, I'm not looking at child abuse, but of those people that I interviewed, a lot of them had issues where their children were involved in these instances of domestic violence. And that is a pathway. That is a huge indicator. If your children are involved in